What life lesson did you learn that you will never forget, and when did you learn it? You don't ever truly know another person. Unless you can take up precedence in their head, you'll never be privy to their true nature. Learn this through the process of growing up and losing friends/so's. It's not always malicious. Sometimes you latch on to the idea of a person rather than who they are. It'll eventually drive you apart. You realize that there is incongruity between who they are and who you think they are. I used to spend evenings with my grandmother every single day. One day, I was busy with some schoolwork and could not spend the time with her. She passed away that night. It has been 10 years since that day, and not a single day has passed when I do not contemplate what would have happened if I just spent some time with her that evening. Since then, I have made it a point to never take people for granted. It could be over before you even realize. My dad taught me as a teenager that relationships should be easy. Biggest and best lesson I've ever learned. Relationships should not be filled with drama but with friendship and respect. Really helped me choose who to be with. Now I teach my daughters the same thing, so maybe they can prevent being in a painful relationship. Yes, if you're ever worried about telling them something or afraid you'll upset them for just being you, then you're not in a healthy relationship. You shouldn't have to hide anything from them, because that's literally what a partner is for. They're supposed to love you and everything that makes you you. Just also keep in mind that compromise does exist, because everybody has different ways of doing things. But if they want you to do something that you just can't change about yourself or your routine, it's time to move on. Edit. I got my first award. Obligatory thanks, kind stranger. Preach. I had an abusive ex, and every day with him was like walking on eggshells. You never knew if he was in a good mood or if he wanted to snap your neck for breathing wrong. And oh man, the drama he created. He one time was convinced a male employee at Target, who just so happened to look in my general direction, was trying to hit on me. He tried to fight the poor dude, and we got kicked out of the store. It was so embarrassing. Real adults and relationships don't throw temper tantrums like toddlers and try to make a scene. To always wear a helmet when riding a bike. I came off it when I was 9 or 10, and I hit the ground so hard that the brand new helmet broke in half and I couldn't walk for about a week. Luckily I fell off in front of a paramedic's house and I was with my cousin, so I was okay, but if I didn't wear that helmet I wouldn't be here today. Some people, most people, have families who love them and support them, but some people don't, and they don't know that it's terrible because it's just normal for them. It took me 32 years of life, 4 years working with severely traumatized children and 2 years of therapy to realize that I too was traumatized from day one. I always get disturbed when I read people stating things like blood is thicker than water, always be there for family, etc. It's not personal. I love my family and would always be there, but I'm well aware that's my situation, not everyone's. Some fairly large amount of people would be well served by distancing themselves from family. This assumption on social media that everyone's family life is wonderful and to be treasured is just concerning. This is me. Parents split when I was 4, only grew up with my dad's side. Both parents, grandparents all passed before I was 30. I only have one brother and one aunt, and we barely speak. I would trade everything I have for a normal family life. I dated an ex when I was like 23 for 2 years who had a huge family and got together regularly outside of holidays, and it was best thing I have ever been a part of. When we split I was legit sad cause her aunts and uncles and the nieces and nephews all eventually stopped talking to me too. For a brief moment I had it. I come from a similar situation. My sister still hasn't realized that some families actually love and support you. In addition to your point, I hope a lot of people also realize that just because they have a great family and home life, it doesn't mean that everyone is the same. A lot of my friends from high school, college thought my family's reactions were just based on my actions. If I was in trouble, it was because I was a bad daughter. I remember one time a high school friend was over and my mom snapped at the tiniest thing I did. like accidentally leaving something on the kitchen counter. My friend pulled me out of the house and honestly was more shook up than me. It never occurred to them when I said my mom took out her problems on me. I meant it. You can always take more ketchup, but you can't put it back if you take too much at once. Well, technically, you can put it back, but not easily. I learned this from my mom as a child. She wasn't trying to be profound or anything, but little did she know that was my first lesson in entropy. It's better to be delicate in all situations in life than to go too big too fast. Think about whenever you've regretted saying something immediately after saying it, and this little saying could save you in the future. Always make time for loved ones. Time is not on your side. I learned this too late. After my grandma died, I was always working or studying and said next week I am going to visit grandma, next week I'll give her a call, next week. I saw her at the family gatherings like birthdays and such if I was able to make them, but that's still different than going by her house and spend time together. The moments I did that, it was nice and we laughed, so there wasn't reason to not visit grandma. Always sweet, and even when I was in the 30s she gave me a bag of candy when I left. One year one was too busy, read selfish, and hadn't visited for months. I wasn't aware it has been months. That was after I checked how long ago it was. September was the last visit, and in December she passed away. I couldn't make time for 3 months. Not a single day I could spare a few hours to visit cause career, and I'll go next week. This is more than 10 years ago and it still haunts me at times. She was always understanding and be like, yeah, I know you youngsters are busy and need to work hard and don't have it as easy as we. Even though she went through World War II and needed to walk 2 provinces for food. She considered that they had the easy life. I always thought I had enough time when I was done with insert something here, but always something else turned up. Next week I'll go was the worst thing I had told myself, and I wished I spent way more time with grandma. It made me change everything. I now only work 3 days a week and spend the rest of the time on my family and friends. Make sure to give regular calls and make sure I can be at whatever is needed. Sure, working 5 days a week and having more money for fun is nice, but a bigger car or a bigger house or another vacation does not bring back time. Do I need a Range Rover 4x4 that costs 8 times the price of a Ford Fiesta? Number. Do I need a house with 8 bedrooms? Number. Do I need time? Yes, time is all I wanted. Time is what we get in limited quantity. You can try and make changes in spending less or make more money, but you can't make more time. There is 24 hours in a day. Spend them wisely and don't think others have the same time left as you. The biggest lie I told myself was that I didn't have the time. I had the time. I just managed it badly. My grandma was 89, so she was on borrowed time, but it could as well be my wife who I take out for dinner next week but gets ill or an accident. You don't know what it is you have until it's gone. So much this. A few years ago I had a healthy husband, then bam, paralyzed from a medical episode, hospitalized and nearly medical coma. He's home now, doing better, and despite the trauma of that time, our lives are better because we prioritize what's important, each other and our kids. And please don't beat yourself up. Your grandma sounds like she was an amazing and understanding lady. This reminds me of the tail end where you break down time in units of events like hash of winters or Super Bowls left in your life. The author estimates he's used 93% of his time with his parents by the time he graduated high school. He's now in the tail end of the time he has left. Puts things in perspective. Like if you knew you only had 10 really good sunsets left at your current rate, you might make more effort to get out and enjoy them. Most people's moral integrity isn't nearly as bulletproof as they believe it is, and often, through no fault of their own, we all have certain vulnerabilities that can make us do or say things we had previously thought were below us, whether it be trauma, desperation, loneliness, etc. I learned to view my family as good friends. Some friends are worth dropping everything to help. Some are acquaintances that you only talk to occasionally. Some friends are not friends at all and just use and abuse you. Just because somebody is related to you by blood does not mean that you owe them anything. I was doing forced landing practice in the training area in a Cessna 150 Tourabat with my instructor. On the way back to land, he asked me this question: "What will you do if the engine catches fire?" I looked at him and said, "Jump out." He said, "No, you just control the plane. You yaw the plane to get the fire away from the cockpit, and just keep flying. You forget about the fire, and do what is within your control." I looked at him, stunned, and said, "That's fucking profound, Steve." I promptly took that advice and applied it to every aspect of my life. Don't worry about things that are outside your control. Somehow my parents imparted to me life was a pie. If somebody got some, I got less. That if I wasn't doing something impressive or winning at something, I was failing. I thought the way to be valuable and get people to like me was to achieve more, prove how smart I was, and one-up them. You can imagine how that goes over. When people predictably didn't like that, I thought it was because I wasn't achieving enough or seeming smart or talented enough, so I'd get even worse. It's hard to undo such an ingrained mindset and to admit shortcomings and share vulnerability, but the gradual life lesson has been not to try to impress people, not to be ashamed of your true imperfect self, but to listen to people, share with them, and be open, honest, and vulnerable. Kind of an odd thing too, because admitting you're wrong or just having the ability to admit when you're wrong is a lot of times the only way to get right, better. Everyone loves talking about self-help, even pointing to things like AA to use as an example, but still somehow miss that it's the act of admitting wrongdoing and admitting we aren't always right that lets us become more right. Don't become a walking charity. When I was in my early to mid-20s, I had a lot of friends who were falling on hard times or needed various types of help, and I was only too happy to help. I had the money, I had the time, I would do anything for them. Not one of them repaid, financially, or otherwise. Instead, I was just taken advantage of, left, right and center. It all ended when I suggested a friend of mine who broke up with their partner and had no place to live come stay with me. Next thing I knew, they were inviting their friends over all the time, often without my permission. They weren't contributing a penny to the income of the household. Their new partner soon moved in, and my house basically became a doss house, and they became a mean-spirited, emotionally abusive asshole who made my life miserable in my own home. Now, I offer advice only. If you need financial support, you can go to the council. If you need housing, you can go to the council. If you want me to provide either of those things, you can bugger off. I'm sorry you had what sounds like a bunch of such shitty friends. Someone who is as generous as you to share what you have and expect nothing in return and then getting shit back is so much worse than the nothing you were okay with. I know, man. I went a different route though and rejected those shitty people and continued to be there for those who needed me as I could. It's harder, but I refuse to let them win like that and change me. I'd rather change my environment. When I was about 9 years old, I used to bully a lad in my class. I felt like a tough guy because he was bigger than me. I bullied him because he came from a poor family, but I'd always had a wealthy family. Until I was around 9 years old, my dad's alcoholism escalated and cost him his job and destroyed our family. I bullied that lad out of anger because of what I was going through, and then one day he beat the shit out of me. Our head teacher, principal, made us sit outside his office for a whole day together, just the two of us. I quickly realized how much I upset him and we became friends. I had a similar situation happen when I was in elementary school, like 4th and 5th grade. I was constantly bullied on the bus and at school by one kid. I tried to stand up to him a couple times but never got anywhere and just got my ass kicked a lot. Eventually, I started taking my anger out on another kid and bullied him. Me and my bully got close and he stopped messing with me. After a year or so I realized what I had done, and for the rest of my time in school I tried to make up for what I had done to this other kid. We became decent friend and front hat point on. Even up to now, I find friendships in everyone around me. If they don't like me, I just move on instead of hating them or hating myself because of their dislike of me. Huge life lesson for me and had really heavily contributed to the person I'm today. had a similar experience in high school. The kid was a dick to basically everyone, highly intelligent and wasn't shy from showing it, being a big gay. We were playing touch football for and everyone conspired for him to be quarterback and his defense would let me go through them to hit him. And I did. Everyone was celebrating and shit and he was hurting like crazy. Mainly knocked the wind out of him. During another session, while playing floor hockey, he was getting bullied hard and I started to feel real bad for what I did and remember being almost in tears from it. I started protecting him from then on and we had a good friendship throughout the rest of school. Once I stood up for him, no one would dare to do anything else to him. I apologized to him. He's the bigger man for accepting. 15 years later I still think about those events and what a piece of shit I was. Open my eyes that the world has enough hate in it and I shouldn't contribute to it. Sorry for the essay and as shown I'm not a wordsmith. Smile. When someone shows you who they are, especially if they show you repeatedly, believe them. I had an ex I caught lying multiple times, suspected of cheating multiple times, generally showed me I wasn't as important to him as his good times were. Surprise surprise, a year later when he dumps me and I find he's been cheating and lying for our entire relationship. I had never heard that particular rhyme before. And while I kinda knew that instinctively after doing it so many times in one form or another, I was getting stuck on something where I had to do it backwards. My friend's younger sister, she was about 9 or 10, I think, said that rhyme offhandedly as she walked by. I was about 20 or so at the time. I've thought about it every time I've turned a screw since, and I've never really messed it up again either. Lesson learned, both the literal one. And don't discount wisdom just because it comes from an unexpected place. My father was an alcoholic. My mom wanted a divorce and his response was to shoot himself in the stomach. In front of his kids. After that he slowly got worse, to the point we didn't see him for years. He was in prison and never told us. Then, when we were in our late teens, he wanted to reconnect, but didn't know what it meant to be a father to older children and treated us like little kids. We struggled to relate to him for a while and then my uncle called me one day, I was 23, to tell me that he died in his sleep from alcohol withdrawal in a halfway house. I think movies, TV shows and books, and religion, makes it seem bad to not forgive someone, but I can't forgive him. The suicidal attempts, the lack of contact, the alcoholism. It was too much. But what movies don't tell you is this: it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel conflicted and unsure of how you feel. Life goes on. That doesn't mean you didn't love them. It just can't be wrapped up in a neat bow. I think it was important for me to realize that. Expecting enough love from others to have a sustained income of love won't work. Love yourself and you always will be loved unconditionally. The realization of this was huge to me. In the past I tried so hard to appeal to everyone around me, work, family. But one day I asked myself, what is it that I need right now? The answer was love. I realized that I was always trying to appeal to others by being nice. If I can be nice to others because I wanted love, why can't I be nice to myself? So I changed my behavior towards me, learned to say no, and after that my world changed completely. I have this overwhelming fear that makes me avoid fighting or arguing with anyone, especially if they're about to leave and the problem will not be resolved before then. This has actually made me not stick up for myself in situations where I should have or confront bigger issues that should have been worked through. I always perceive me internalizing and dealing with the way someone's actions affected me by myself is less harm than if we were to argue and possibly be the last interaction we had if something were to happen. I won't bring up issues I have with my parents or family out of this fear we'll stop talking and something bad will happen. I'd rather live with the emotional pain they don't realize they cause. Also, I have to make sure the last thing I say to my fiancé whenever he leaves and before bed is I love you, just in case. When I was in high school, my mom and I took a day to go church shopping in a new part of town. We must have gone to 5 services that day. Some were fun and lively, some were quiet and reserved, but one in particular really stuck out to me for being so kooky. It was October, and the preacher was starting his sermon to the room of 40 people with Halloween is right around the corner. Who here celebrates Halloween? I was the only person to raise my hand. The preacher goes, good, because Halloween is celebrating the devil, and we don't do that here. At this point, I quickly drop my hand as people give me weird looks. My mom then goes, by the way, it's not a good idea to volunteer information to a group of people you don't know. I learned that I need to wait until I understand at least the basic dynamics of a group before sharing anything about myself. In these cases especially, it's better to be quiet and anonymous than to stand out and be a target. We never ended up going back to any of the churches we saw that day, though.